Welcome back, everyone. We are back on YouTube and LinkedIn for another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into game changing leadership ideas and we hear from the brilliant minds behind them, of course. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is Frank Sgueglia. Frank is the VP of IT at Penta Group, a consulting firm focused on communications, reputation management, and brand building. Before that, he held tech leadership roles in various organizations. And today, we're thrilled to have him with us. Frank, it's an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Likewise, appreciate the time.
Frank, you have a successful, super successful journey as a tech leader, as a tech executive. When you reflect on your own journey, when you think about your journey, the success that you had, where do you see the reasons for your success? What are some of the ingredients that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, as every problem-solving, like-minded tech expert in the field, I have to say it always hinged on curiosity.
Okay.
When I was younger, I was taking things apart and I wanted to understand how they worked. And naturally, that grew into electronics. Then it grew into technology because that's always been the closest to something that I couldn't solve, right? It's not something you can necessarily get your hands on. Well, although there are like desktops and computers and things like that, when you're working with something that has a brain of its own, or working on something with a microboard, it just gets complicated to take apart. So it's always interested in problem solving, and that's really where it allowed me to open up into understanding my likes and my passion, and just working with technology, and the fact that it's also such a fast-paced environment. As I'm sure you have with other guests, you'll notice AI is a buzz keyword that's flying around here quite often, and right now that's just fueling so much creativity and so many thoughts. So it's really about the creativity problem solving side.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So creativity, curiosity, and open mind of looking for something. I think many leaders in technology or technologists start a journey that way, right? Because they, like you said, they want to take things apart and maybe put them together differently and see if it
Yeah.
improves them or if it just ruins the whole thing. And at some point, as we are on that journey, that curiosity needs to shift, right? It needs to shift away from the technology to some extent and shift over to other parts of people management, of running the business. Talk a bit about that transition for you. What was that like to shift that
Yes.
curiosity to a yeah? Looks like it sparked something there, Frank.
Yeah, yeah. As any IT professional will tell you, we are not very social. But I felt gifted in that sense where I've always was born with the gift of gab. And I translated that into very early on in my career into a window as to how I can connect with people. And that allowed me to have the conversations that traditionally didn't happen in the IT team, or, being a direct report to, or even a boss in terms of like managing teams and people. It's translated into a really successful story of where I am able to connect with individuals on their own level and understand really what they're trying to say, and how I can convey my thoughts as a leader, as a teacher, a mentor, and so forth. So, um, you know, transitioning wasn't too hard for me because it
Mhm.
was baked and built in very early on in my career. But I will say it's definitely been something I constantly have to upkeep and learn and learn to manage and learn to continually evolve. So it's very, communication is very much a second nature to me. But I will say that, everyone in the IT industry should certainly focus on their people, right? You can have the best technology stack in the world, and it comes down to two things. It comes down to the people that support it, and it comes down to the people that use it. If they're not using it and it's not getting properly supported, you as an IT individual aren't going to get the recognition or the recognition that you need.
That was a nice distinction between the two kinds of people, the
Yeah.
employees and customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Again, reflecting on your journey, thinking back of some events that happened, what was a moment where you were surprised by something? A situation where you may have had a clear idea of how this is going to play out in leadership, right? Not a tech development, but in leadership. You thought you had this would play out a certain way, and you went into the situation and it ended up being completely different.
Yeah, great question. And unfortunately, as IT and tech leaders, we are faced with this, I think, a lot more frequently than people speak about.
Okay.
Given the technology landscape is continually changing, we're always having to keep our head on a swivel for bleeding cutting edge and arms race technologies. And I'm not going to talk about AI. I'd like to focus on something different for once, right? Everyone's talking about it, but there's a lot of times. One of the biggest times that I can imagine, or at least recall, was working for a larger company, and we led their data integrations and the data ingestion process, and we managed the application, and we worked with their teams and the DevOps teams to really kind of hit home with a lot of customer stories and feature updates and things like that. And for about 6 months, the team was talking about, hey, we're going to release this brand new release. It's going to solve every single one of our problems. Every meeting we went to, it was, oh, this is going to be the North Star of applications. And I remember going into the release meeting and, just before the release, just to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row. And immediately they pumped the brakes, said, we're not going to release it. It's not a priority this year. I mean, it hits you like a Mack truck when you get into these meetings, and that's where you realize the importance of having to shift priorities and shift and, let's take out the people talking skills and maybe understand why. And was this
Mhm.
a business line decision? Was this the company shifting in a different
Yeah,
direction? Or was this the application's really not meant to do that? Or, we're investing too much time in something that's not going to get too much return on investment. So there's a lot of things that people, that we have to constantly evaluate. And I think being flexible is one of them. And yeah, I learned it very early on, and that was one of the first experiences that has always stuck with me is don't go into every conversation or every meeting assuming that things that were planned or things that were said are going to happen because in technology they likely don't.
yeah, yeah. That's a great example, and I can only imagine how much of a hitting the brick wall moment that must have been in that situation. Is there anything as a general lesson that can be taken from that? Anything when you think back to that, you thought, I wish I had done that, or wish I handled it differently, or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. One of the areas in IT that I constantly talk about is ego.
Okay.
And it's very easy for people to gatekeep knowledge and to gatekeep
Mm,
positional power, right? Micromanagement. So from an early on perspective, especially going into these things where you're responsible for delivering products and solutions and platforms, you are very hidebound on the output or the outcome. And if it doesn't go right, you take it personally, or people will take it personally. Like, what? I didn't build this good enough. I'm not answering. Like, what did I do wrong? And sometimes it's just a variable that you cannot control.
yeah,
And for me, it was keeping my ego in check while keeping the curiosity piece fueled, but also keeping the people piece fueled as well, and making sure I still am maintaining those relationships and not burning bridges by being stubborn. And I'm a very competitive individual. And more times than often, I like to think my way is the best way. And that's also part of what got me here. Is I was very strongly opinionated on certain topics and certain ideas, and I was pushing things through when others couldn't
mm,
see the 30 feet in front of them and see that the tunnel or the end of the tunnel rather. And that's a blessing and a curse. But I would say ego is something that is very much having to keep your head on a swivel.
yeah, yeah. And I really appreciate the way you framed this, that getting the ego down and at the same time keeping the passion still up and keeping the interest, the curiosity still there, right? Because it's so tempting to get completely worn down and
Burnout is real.
yes, yes, absolutely. Let me take a different look or look at your leadership journey from a different perspective. I'm sure you had mentors, trusted advisors, role models on your journey. When you think back of them, what is something that you picked up from them that still is important to you, that you still hold on to?
Wow, there's a lot of mentors in the industry as you continue networking events and things like that. I will say some of the stuff that I picked up is and that still sticks with me is about leadership skills.
Mhm.
You can be a very talented individual in the technology space, and you can really become a subject matter expert in specific areas, but if you're elevating your career and you're elevating everything else in the tech space, but you're not elevating people and your leadership skills, you won't really make it too far. And that's something that's stuck with me because we've all had great bosses. I've had fantastic bosses. I've had bad bosses, and looking back at it, I'm thankful for both. because
Mm,
they've helped me shape the way and the leader that I am today. And I will say that the leadership experience, both good and bad, is something that stuck with me. And as far as the mentorship side, it's good to learn from someone who's gone through it. We all know it. It's a
mm,
tried and true statement, and I've utilized that very much, and I still keep in contact with my people that I view as mentors. And every now and then I'll pitch ideas off their head and say, hey, are you still in this space? Can I bounce something off you? I haven't talked to you in a year. How you doing? So it's the connections, and it's just the leadership skills that really were impressed in me, and I take that on to this day.
Frank, we talked about your past leadership journey. I'd like to shift the focus on to today. And
Yeah.
this is not a question about companies, not about roles or titles or anything like that, still on your leadership journey. When you look at where you are today and you ask yourself, what's next? Where can I grow? What's an opportunity to level up? Where might that be? What might be that area where there is a next step?
Yeah. Great question. So I have to dip into a little bit of my personal life for this
Hmm.
one because professionally, there's a very much I want to say a planned path, right? You
Hmm.
have your goals, you have everything planned that you want to achieve, and there's variations to those, right? You have the forks in the road, you have the dead ends, you have the storms that knock down the trees, so you have to adjust. But I feel in the personal life that it's much more rewarding from a perspective that I'm shifting, not to say that I'm not shifting focus away from my career, I'm shifting focus on giving back to the community and shifting focus on really taking time and effort to help build the next generation of workers.
Hmm.
And that's something I hold near and dear to my heart because within the last few years, I volunteer a lot. I volunteer for sports coach services. I teach religious education. And just being able to give back to the community just really fuels that leadership side of me because if we're constantly taking and constantly, always expecting, we have to turn around and give back. And that's part of really something that I'd like to focus on as, the next 6, 12, 24 months because I have children in the educational system, and I kind of want to really help them shape that path so they can be successful. So the focus is really just giving back and helping the community and building the next, generation of tech workers, right? Especially with AI. We don't know where this is going to land us job wise. We don't know what's going to stay, what's going to go. And if I can be a part of leading that discussion in that
Yeah,
group to help individuals, as many as I can, that's where I'd like to focus.
yeah. Given that your focus is on educating the next generation or helping them become mature, what's a key message that you want to share with them? What's the Sgueglia leadership philosophy or something like that that you feel hold on
Yes,
to this, right? This
man,
is if I
this
could
is a sore spot,
if I
but
could
I will
sum it up
say
in one
the key
sentence.
message,
Yeah,
the
go
key
ahead.
message is put the social media apps down.
Okay. Okay. So to all the
Um, you
YouTube and
know,
LinkedIn folks who are watching this,
Yeah, listen,
not
YouTube's
much.
great. Listen, shorts are great. As long as
Yeah.
they're purposeful and they're driven, right? We can all get lost in the rabbit holes of all these crazy
Yeah.
streams and crazy things that exist now, but use the phone as a tool. And I think it's partially also I grew up in a time where we didn't have the smartphones, readily at our hip. We had to go out and read the encyclopedias. We had to use the decimal system in the libraries to find out where the books were. We couldn't copyright with AI. So for me, it's kind of getting back to a little bit of that foundational knowledge. Don't depend on the phone as as something that is a lifeline. Use it as a tool to learn how to better yourself. And that's really like in the technology focus. That's what I'm focused on. Trying to build back is just great. Kids these days are exposed to so much more information than
Yeah.
I ever was. And I understand it's a different landscape and we have to adapt our thinking and our critical skills, but being able to disconnect from it and think critically and learn is a very key fundamental value that I'd like to instill.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe still on the topic of what your philosophy is or what a key message is. When you think of the repertoire of leadership tools that you have, is there something like a go-to tool, something that you like to use, or something that you pull from when things don't work, when you feel like I need a fallback level because something's,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I was blessed with partnerships
Hmm.
professionally through my career,
Hmm.
where mentors and business line leaders, there were quite a few very smart individuals that had put together these groups of technology leaders.
Hmm.
And while this is just like an in-house internal kind of thing, this is a resource slash toolkit that I really heavily rely on to this day. Connecting, being able to connect with individuals that are familiar with your landscape, not on the technology front, but the business side, the people leadership side. That is very, very, very valuable to me. And that's what I constantly pull back on. I will ping the group. I will ping groups of people that I'm involved in the same landscape and just use those social media tools. And I know I badmouth social media, but to give it the good light is basically, connect with individuals that are like-minded and use them as sounding boards because I myself absolutely will take the time to connect with someone who makes the effort to connect and ask the questions. I will gladly give advice. I will gladly give my opinion. Not to say that it's always the right one, but I will always give it from a stance of this is what I've been through, this is what I've
Yeah.
done, take it or leave it, and this is the outcome that I've gotten. And I think it's really, really the connecting and the network side of social media. That is the important. That's a tool that I constantly go back to because it's readily available. It's at our fingertips. We'll use it, but I'm using it to better my experience and my knowledge. Likewise, as giving back as well.
Yeah. For many technologists, there's a bit of a hurdle of getting into these network groups, getting into these communities, and
Yeah.
taking part of them, right? Any advice you have for them other than just
Yes.
break through it or overcome your own challenges?
I will say it is very, very overwhelming when you're
Mm,
trying to figure out what direction you want to go in. And I think we're at such an amazing point in time where we have so many tools that can help give us the framework of even that particular path, right? Use AI, use
mm,
Gemini, use OpenAI, use, Anthropic, use these tools that are readily available to you to help frame that plan. Because if you don't know what you don't know, what's the harm in getting a
yes.
plan put together for you and trying it and seeing if it fails? If it fails, you start over again. And now you'll have a foundation. Now you'll have a framework that you can reference and build on, right? I think part of the hardest steps is just getting over that writer's block, right? How
Mm,
do I get started? How do I do this? Everything now out there nowadays in terms of technology is helping you answer those questions. I think it's burn-in time and just going through the motions and seeing what works, taking note, modifying your plan, and you'll get there. And by any means, I am not super professional on that, and I'm not super productive when it comes to that, but I have overcome the initial hurdles, and I'm seeing the return on investment.
got it. Let's shift into the future and um, ponder about what might be in the future. I know we're speculating, we don't know the future, it's murky, but let's just take a guess. What do you think might change in leadership in the future? What do you think might be some difference if we extrapolate 5, 10 years down the road? What's different then?
Um, so sticking with the AI hot topic area, I think that a lot of leadership energy and focus and attention is going to be geared in the agentic synthetic stakeholder slash just persona building and trying to replace business functions. Well, I don't think that will truly ever happen because there's always going to be a need for a human to oversee, a human to make those critical decisions. But I think a focus as far as leadership is going to be very much agentic, very much AI. As it relates to the mindset of the focus between the leadership people. So not just the deliverables and the products that are available to them, but I think leadership is going to realize over the next 5 years how valuable critical thought and people are in this process. Right now, everybody's on that leg of, rising to see the productivity rates increase, AI adoption rates increase, and just the automations increase. But we're going to get to a point where people are gonna be like, you know what? We had some really smart people. Unfortunately, we don't have them anymore. But how do we replace that talent and how do we get that talent back in-house? Whether it be a synthetic AI or it be an actual person, right? I think it's going to be, hey, we'll pay you to train our data. Give me your thought process and break down your mind map. But I think that's where it's going to be. It's going to turn around and focus back on the human element.
Got it. Frank, let me ask you a last question and then we're going to land the plane.
Sure.
If you could change something about how you see most leaders lead their organizations or lead in technology, what would that be?
Yeah. Watch for burnout. AI is absolutely increasing workload as much as it is automating and as much as it is streamlining. It's another tool that we have to use. It's another data source that we have to manage and maintain. So as much as we're adding to the productivity side, we're also adding to the burnout side. And it is hitting the workforce very hard, very quick. That's something I would encourage all leaders to take in consideration. Everybody wants bleeding edge in their infrastructure, in their, the CI/CD pipelines, or just their products that they deliver.
Yep.
Take a look at the people. Make sure the people are doing okay, right? Because we're all struggling in this together. Everything's changing every 6 to 12 hours when it comes to news and technologies and everything like that. So just take a minute and look at your people and ask how they're doing.
Now I'm going to take back my promise of the last question here and ask you one more
Yeah.
after all, Frank.
Yeah.
What do you do to reduce your risk of burnout?
A great question. That's a great question. I offer more of a open door policy where we work with our individuals internally to make sure
Hmm.
that the more productive that they're producing, or the more automations and the more things that they're delivering, we have the time as a team to connect and do team building
Hmm.
exercises. Even if that means a joke on our every Friday meeting or our infrastructure stand-up meetings or our daily scrum meetings, right? So there's little bits and pieces that we can do to kind of bring the human element back to
Hmm.
take those burnout rates a couple notches down and connect with people, right? Because everything's
Yeah.
digital now. We're working from everywhere. Take the time to get in front of someone in person.
Yeah.
And that's really what we strive to do at least every quarter is just meet and understand like, hey, we're gonna go out to dinner. We're gonna enjoy sitting out on the deck and just having a coffee together, right? Let's have that conversation in person once a quarter rather than always digital. So that's what we try to do. I can't say that's the recipe for success because, individuals in the IT space are so different, but I found that that works very well with our team currently.
Frank, thank you so much. Been a real pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate your time today.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Join us again for our next episode, and most importantly, keep your brain cells active.